This just broke. Federal Judge Karen Irmagut has just issued a temporary restraining order blocking President Trump from deploying 200 National Guard troops in Portland, Oregon. The judge specifically stated this is a nation of constitutional law, not martial law, and said that this is executive overreach. Now you're going to have a million MAGA supporters claiming that she is an activist judge, but guess who appointed her? Yeah, this dictator, I mean president right here.
So a lot of people have been asking, why on earth would Trump appoint folks in his first term who would later turn around and block him? Like this judge who was appointed in 2019 and now ruled against him on the Portland issue. Well, here's the thing. In Trump's first term, he walked into a system that was already stacked against him. They were only going to let him pick people they knew they could control. So his strategy was to show all of us exactly how that control worked. He had to pick the people who would get approved, even if they weren't his ideal choices, and then gradually start changing things from within. Because let's be real, if he tried to pick anyone else, they were not going to allow it. You can't just flip the whole system overnight. It's built to protect itself. And now, even though some judges are blocking federal help, don't think that means Trump is out of options. He still has routes he can take, like the Supreme Court. There are other measures too, but we don't need to spell them all out here. Just know he's not out of moves. So keep an eye out, because this is all part of showing us how the system works and how you change it step by step. Have a great day, Patriots.
Citing the risk of martial law, a federal judge in Oregon, appointed by Donald Trump no less, tonight stops Trump, at least temporarily, from sending the National Guard to Oregon. The judge, Karen Irmagut, basically found that the state of Oregon was likely to succeed in its case against Trump, saying that it was illegal under the U.S. Constitution for him to be sending the National Guard to Portland. So therefore, she issued a temporary restraining order stopping Trump, at least temporarily, from sending such troops to Oregon pending the resolution of the case. Now, this is going to go to an appeal court and then probably the Supreme Court, possibly, and we'll see, because the Supreme Court tends to be very MAGA and tends to rubber stamp anything Trump wants to do. I want to read you a few paragraphs from NBC News, including her mentioning martial law. Irmagut wrote in her ruling that the U.S. Constitution grants Congress the power to call forth troops, the militia in the founding document, to execute laws, suppress an insurrection, or repel an invasion. The judge wrote that Trump's attempt to federalize the National Guard, absent constitutional authority, undermines the sovereign interest of Oregon. Quote, "This country has a long-standing and foundational tradition of resistance to government overreach, especially in the form of military intrusion into civilian affairs," she wrote. "This historical tradition boils down to a simple proposition. This is a nation of constitutional law, not martial law." That's quite interesting. Defendants have made a range of arguments that, if accepted, defendants meaning Trump, if accepted, risk blurring the line between civil and military federal power to the detriment of this nation. She's warning that Trump is trying to institute martial law in America. Pretty scary stuff, guys. Great that the judge stood up to him. I'm not convinced this is going to stand on appeal, because the Supreme Court, like I said, tends to rubber stamp everything this guy does.
Now that a Trump-appointed federal judge in Oregon said that he was violating the Constitution and the Posse Comitatus Act, trying to send the National Guard in to Portland, I have a valid question. What constitutes as treason? What actually constitutes the president committing treason? Because if he decides to order 200 National Guardsmen to Portland, Oregon, have the plans written out, everything ready to go, and the only thing that stops him is a judge, is that treason? Maybe violating state sovereignty and the Posse Comitatus Act isn't considered treason at all. But if it is, when is it considered treason? Is it when he ignores that judge's orders and sends the 200 National Guardsmen into Portland anyway? And if he does, because he most certainly will, because they don't give a fuck what judges say, is that considered treason? Who decides when the president has actually committed treason? And if he does commit treason, and it's officially like checked off on the books that he did, and everybody agrees on it, and it's in black and white on paper, then what happens? The Supreme Court said that he can't be held legally liable for anything he did under official acts of the presidency. Is this considered to be official acts? My problem with this whole system since 1776, okay, the whole thing is that there are too many gray areas, there are too many loopholes, there are too many things that somebody like Donald Trump can just say, yeah, you know, I'm just taking advantage of the loophole. The Supreme Court said I could do it, I'm going to do it. Someone like him is not concerned about going to jail because he's never faced a single consequence for anything he's ever done in his entire life, and he doesn't think it's going to start now. So my question is, when is it treason? And if it is, and everyone agrees on it, what happens? Probably nothing. He doesn't go to jail. He doesn't get removed from office. The failure of our system and our constitutional government. This American exceptionalism that's attached to the Constitution, all of it's just bullshit. All of it. None of it was meant to protect us from somebody like Donald Trump.
Now, a Trump judge tonight dismantling the very president who appointed her in a legal filing blocking the National Guard from being sent to Portland. This is the tweet from Kyle Cheney. A judge has granted a restraining order blocking Trump's call up of the National Guard in Portland. Judge Immergut, again a Trump appointee, said relating to Trump's argument on why the National Guard should be called up to Portland, said, quote, "The president's determination was simply untethered to the facts." Judge Immergut went further by warning that these efforts by Trump to make these bad faith justifications risked plunging the country into a form of unconstitutional military rule. And this is a conservative Republican judge that Donald Trump appointed. Increasingly stark language that these judges, including many Trump judges, are using in their rulings against the Trump administration. Saying things like untethered to the facts and there is a significant risk of a constitutional crisis. This is not normal, and even Trump judges recognize that. The attack on the rule of law in our nation must stop.
5 of the 15 D.C. district judges have no prior judicial experience. Oddly enough, it seems like they were just handpicked by these global elites to carry out their agenda for those countries seeking to destroy America. 5 foreign-born judges, blocking Trump's agenda. All 5 were appointed by Obama and Biden. None could pass a security background investigation. Let's get into it. Number 1, Judge Tanya Sue Chutkan. Before her 2014 appointment, she was a public defender in a private practice, but had no judicial experience. Number 2, Amit Mata. I'm saying that name right. I hope so. Prior to 2014, he was a partner in a law firm and had no judicial experience. Number 3, Ana Cecilia Reyes. Appointed in 2023, she was a litigator in a private practice with no judicial role. Number 4, Amir Hatim Mahdi. Before being appointed in 2024, he worked as a nonprofit and...
So friends, we now have a legal opinion and ruling that Donald Trump can be prosecuted for his crimes. He does not have absolute presidential immunity. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, Judge Tanya Chutkan, the judge presiding over Donald Trump's criminal prosecution in Washington, D.C. for attempting to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election, Judge Chutkan just issued her written ruling, concluding that a president does not have absolute immunity against being prosecuted for his crimes, as Donald Trump has been claiming he had all along, and Trump's case will now proceed to trial. Judge Chutkan's 48-page written ruling is so...
A Trump-appointed judge just did the unthinkable, blocked him from sending the military into Portland, issuing a restraining order over concerns related to martial law. This ruling just came down this evening. Let's get into it. District Court Judge Karen Immergut wrote in her ruling that the administration's claims of daily unrest in Portland were, quote, untethered to the facts and risked plunging the nation into an unconstitutional form of military rule. Quote, this is a nation of constitutional law, not martial law. Now, this restraining order or stay is temporary. It lasts for 2 weeks, and the administration is going to appeal to the Ninth Circuit. This is the same federal appeal circuit that heard the Los Angeles case and restored the administration's right to send the National Guard back into LA. However, District Court Judge Immergut said the protests in Portland don't rise to the level of severity to justify doing so. And when those of us on the left said, hey, he's going to try and militarize and declare martial law, you called us crazy. But now a Trump-appointed federal judge has the same concerns. What do you know?
Breaking news, Oregon. federal judge blocks Donald Trump from sending National Guard troops to Portland, Oregon. What? Yes, this is breaking as we speak. A federal judge appointed by Donald Trump has blocked his deployment of 200 or so National Guard to Portland, Oregon. Federal Judge Karen J. Emmergut, appointed by Donald Trump, has temporarily blocked him federalizing and using the National Guard to be deployed in Portland, Oregon. It is a temporary restraining order that blocks this at least through October 18th, unless it's extended. So again, a major defeat for Donald Trump with his efforts to use the National Guard troops in Portland, Oregon. Again, under the 1878 Posse Comitatus Act, they can only be used if required or requested by the governor, which they have not been, and unless there's some national emergency, which there is not. Both the state attorney general and the attorney for the city of Portland had sued to stop this, and they have therefore won at this point through October 18th. There you have it. Love to hear from my Oregonians, my Democrats, my MAGAs, my crazies, my cuckoos, my burned out light bulbs. Judge appointed by Trump blocks his deployment of National Guard troops to Portland.
So the Trump administration is now saying that a Trump-appointed judge is committing insurrection because they ruled against him. So for some context, yesterday, a Trump-appointed judge in Oregon temporarily blocked Donald Trump from deploying hundreds of National Guardsmen to Portland. They wrote that this is essentially one step closer to a martial law state. And so Stephen Miller, who's objectively one of the worst people in the world and somebody who's very difficult to look at, said legal insurrection. Insurrection. Wait till they find out what happened on January 6th if they think a judge exercising their authority is an insurrection. The president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, not an Oregon judge. Stephen, open the Constitution. We have a separation of powers. If the president is trying to do something illegal, the judges, the judiciary, can step in and say, not happening. Their attempts at establishing a dictatorship here in the United States are so blatant. And when a judge, somebody in the government, steps in and does the right thing and stops them from establishing their wannabe government, they freak out and go on long tirades. I'm so sick of the Trump administration.
A federal judge has temporarily blocked the Trump administration from sending National Guard troops to Portland, and the White House is planning an appeal. In her opinion, the judge wrote this about recent clashes between protesters and federal officers. She said that they are inexcusable, but they are nowhere near the type of incidents that cannot be handled by regular law enforcement. She also went on to say that the Trump administration's arguments, quote, risk blurring the line between civil and military federal power to the detriment of this nation, a sentiment echoed by Oregon's Attorney General.
Mobilizing the United States military in our cities is not normal. It should not be normal, and we will fight to make sure that it is never normal. Today's ruling is a healthy check on the president's power, and as the president, you must have an actual facts based on reality, not social media or just your gut feeling if you want to mobilize the military here in the United States.
Now, the temporary restraining order expires on October 18th, and AG Dan Rayfield says the state plans to ask for an extension.
We have major news right now in the ruling where a Trump-appointed judge blocked the administration's ability to send the National Guard into Portland, Oregon. She sent a stark warning to the rest of the country. She said that Donald Trump's essentially determination is not, quote, tethered to the facts. And she went one step further. If she allowed the deployment of the National Guard on the streets against American citizens in Portland, Oregon, it would move the country closer to a martial law type state, where essentially the United States military is being deployed as a personal police force for the President of the United States. Her warnings, this is a Trump judge, she is warning that Donald Trump is trying to move the country closer to martial law. Let that sink in. Now, this is a temporary block. She blocked it for 14 days. Not much longer. It may go permanent, but we'll see what happens. In any event, major breaking news right now. Spread the word. Judge Karen Emmergut in Oregon just blocked Trump's order to send the National Guard into Portland. Follow along.